Have you ever wondered how language unite and divide people at the same time? It's an important means of communication, yet it also possesses an inherently dividing force among people. For hundreds of years, people had kept asking and wondering what the human language is capable of and what limits does it impose. There was this quote from Ludwig von Wittgenstein in the early 1900s. He said, "The limits of our language means the limits of our world." Cultural differences and language barriers create social divisions that somehow affect how people perceive the world. Do the French and Chinese see the world the same way? No. Do Filipinos and Americans see the world the same way? Again, no, they don't. Well, the point here is that no two national groups see the world in exactly the same way. In the context of diplomacy, however, language barriers and cultural differences are a huge concern. So you might be asking, what's the connection? Well, language barriers are relevant to diplomacy since meetings and negotiations are essential for international relations. When two negotiating parties from different cultural backgrounds attempt to communicate, the potential for disagreement is great. The purpose of any negotiation, business or diplomacy, is to reach a mutually beneficial agreement, and minimizing these communication barriers can be a big challenge. In particular, in a cross-cultural context, negotiation becomes much more complex and difficult. The difficulty, of course, involves dealing with different sets of values, attitudes, behaviors, and communication styles of the other party. So the question is, which language is the most diplomatic one? Well, the answer is, of course, not simple at all. And to start with, there is no single diplomatic lingua franca, since in most cases, interstate communication usually meets the challenge of having a common language in order to avoid misunderstandings. This common language used for diplomatic purposes is sometimes called as diplomatic language. Although most of the diplomatic lexicons and dictionaries mention and explain the notion and existence of the diplomatic language, but legally, there has never existed such a language. Usually English and French are the languages used in diplomatic affairs, but apart from English and French, a number of other languages are also used in our days for diplomatic purposes. The problems of mutual understanding, at least for the linguistic competences are concerned, can be solved in various ways between diplomats of different nationalities and mother tongue. Now, there are 4 ways on how to do this. Nevertheless, we have to admit that none of these solutions are perfect. The first solution is that one of the interlocutors speak the language of the other, which at the same time might also mean that he accepts having the chance to have some disadvantages during the communication process because the linguistic competence of a second or third language is rarely in match with that of a mother tongue. This way is effective at times, although problems may arise because the knowledge and efficiency of the language itself may not be adequate. One side is making a concession while the other has an immediate and significant advantage because the language used in the bargaining is the other's mother tongue. Possible political implications may arise as it may be difficult to apply in multilateral diplomacy. Alright, so a second possibility is that both sides use a third neutral language, which is spoken by none of the participants as a mother tongue. That, of course, results in a situation where, theoretically, none of the negotiating parties can have an unfair advantage concerning the linguistic competence. Of course, this solution also implies that either of the parties might not have a complete linguistic mastering of the language. And this can also lead to misunderstanding in extreme cases. This is also one reason why it is not so simple to find a commonly accepted and acknowledged language in the multilateral diplomacy. Still, this is one of the widely used methods in practice of international diplomatic communication, especially in less formal occasions such as receptions or other events. A potential problem in this case may be that neither sides possess a full linguistic knowledge and control, leading to possible bad misunderstandings. Nevertheless, this method is most of the time applied in international practice because of its political advantages. Okay, so third option is that using interpreters. It is also widely acknowledged and utilized, particularly in multilateral diplomacy or for negotiation at a very high political level. not only for reasons of equity, of course, but because politicians and statesmen often do not speak foreign languages. This might happen in two cases. It's either there's no common language shared by the participant of the communicative situation, or they intentionally don't wish to directly communicate using a common language. Well, this latter has got nothing to do with the lack of politeness, of course, and according to the diplomatic protocol, high-ranking statesmen or head of states usually use their mother tongue in certain official occasions, and the use of interpreters is widely a used method in diplomatic negotiations or for tactical purposes as well. However, it is also possible to point out the disadvantages of this method. Using interpreters or translators is time-consuming, it's costly, or sometimes it's inadequate or is straightforwardly incorrect. Even if the translator himself is knowledgeable enough about both languages, he or she may not be familiar with the particular subject, which can be extremely specific. The cost of translation, as I mentioned a while ago, required by the multilateral diplomatic exchanges in the international organization is tremendous. Some years ago, a calculation was made concerning this question, which resulted that the translation of one single page to all official languages of the United Nations amounted to the value necessary to cover the cost of living for one person in India for a whole year. Can you just imagine? Alright, now finally, the last one is, there is a possibility of using one international synthetic artificial language such as Esperanto. Esperanto is an artificial language based as far as possible on words common to the chief European languages. It has been the most successful among many artificial languages. This solution would have many advantages, but unfortunately, it's not likely to be implemented soon, mostly because of the opposition factors that dominate in the international political and therefore also to the cultural and linguistic scene. But whatever method we use to minimize these obstacles, one thing is for sure: all languages are relatively minor variations of a single theme of language, the human language. As we know, languages are the bedrock of the world's cultural heritage. Every language offers a rich and unique insight into the different ways of thinking and living, as well as into the history of countless cultures and people across the globe.